The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Seoul penthouse, but Kang Min-jae heard nothing. His world had collapsed into silence, the kind of silence that preceded destruction. In his hands, he held photographs, documents, bank transfers dating back 7 years. Evidence that rewrote everything he believed about the woman who had vanished from his life without a word. His jaw tightened. The black tiger tattoo coiling up his neck seemed to pulse with barely contained rage. She never betrayed him. Her own family, her own blood, had sold her to protect their political empire. They had made her disappear. They had let him believe she chose to leave. And he had spent 7 years hating the only woman he ever loved. Min-jae's hand closed around the whiskey glass on his desk. The crystal cracked. Blood mixed with amber liquid, dripping onto the evidence of unforgivable sins. His voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. Find her. But what terrified his lieutenant most wasn't the command. It was the terrifying stillness in his boss's eyes. If you think betrayal hurts, wait until you see what happens when the most dangerous man in Seoul discovers the woman he loved was destroyed by her own family. Stay until the end, because Min-jae's next decision will change all of their lives forever. Please like, share, and subscribe. 7 years earlier, Lagos had been burning with summer heat when Amara Adeyemi first saw him. She remembered the weight of the air that night, heavy with jasmine and the distant pulse of Afrobeat from her father's political fundraiser. She remembered the cream silk of her dress, chosen by her mother to project elegance. She remembered feeling like an ornament on display. And then she remembered him. Kang Min-jae stood at the edge of the garden, separate from the crowd of Nigerian politicians and international businessmen. He wore darkness like armor, black suit, black shirt, expression carved from obsidian. The garden lights caught the edge of a tattoo climbing from his collar, disappearing beneath his jaw. He wasn't supposed to be there. Korean business interests in Lagos were always handled through intermediaries. But the Adeyemi family had connections that stretched into shadows most people pretended didn't exist. Amara's father had told her to be polite to their international guests. He hadn't told her about the man who would look at her like he was memorizing the architecture of her soul. You're not drinking. His voice reached her before she realized he had moved. Deep, accented, precise. Amara turned, champagne glass still full in her hand. Neither are you. I don't drink at events where I'm being watched. Everyone watches you. Not everyone. His eyes held hers. Just the ones who matter. She should have walked away. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Be careful with powerful men. They take what they want and leave wreckage behind. But Amara had spent 23 years being careful. That night, she chose to stay. The memory shattered as present-day Amara pressed her forehead against the window of her small London flat. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the city lights into watercolor smears of gold and white. Her reflection stared back at her. Older now, thinner, the softness of youth replaced by the sharp edges of survival. 7 years. 7 years since her family had destroyed everything she loved and blamed her for the wreckage. 7 years since she had seen his face. She had rebuilt herself from nothing. A teaching position at a secondary school in Brixton. A flat the size of her childhood closet. A life so small and quiet that no one from her past would ever think to look for her here. Some nights, she almost convinced herself she had forgotten him. But then she would dream of Seoul, of rain-slicked streets and the weight of his coat around her shoulders. She would wake with his name on her lips and the phantom pressure of his fingers intertwined with hers. Kang Min-jae, the man she was supposed to marry. The man who must hate her now. Her phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. Amara ignored it. Her sister Adiz had been calling for weeks, each voicemail more desperate than the last. Amara, please. You have to come home. Father is dying. He's asking for you. Let him die asking. The cruelty of the thought should have shocked her. Once, she had been the soft one. The daughter who believed in forgiveness, who trusted family above all else. But that daughter had died in Lagos 7 years ago. What remained was a woman who had learned exactly how much family love was worth. Nothing. It was worth nothing at all. In Seoul, Dawn crept across the Han River like a ghost. Min Jae had not slept. The evidence files covered his desk, photographs, financial records, intercepted communications that his people had spent years gathering without understanding what they were truly looking for. He understood now. Chief Adeyemi, Amara's father, had discovered his daughter's relationship with a Korean crime lord 6 months before the wedding was supposed to happen. The political implications had terrified him. The Adeyemi family had spent generations building a reputation of legitimate power. A connection to international organized crime would destroy everything.
So he had made a choice.
He had contacted Min Jae's enemies in Seoul, the Jang family, who had been trying to destroy the Kong syndicate for decades. He had fed them information, locations, schedules. In exchange, they had agreed to create a situation that would force Amara to leave Korea permanently. The car accident that killed Min Jae's younger sister had not been an accident. It had been orchestrated. And Amara had been told that if she didn't disappear, if she ever contacted Min Jae again, they would finish what they started. They would kill him. Min Jae's hands trembled against the desk. For 7 years, he had believed she chose to leave. That their love had meant nothing. That he had been foolish to trust anyone with his heart. He had become colder. Harder. More ruthless. He had built an empire on the foundation of that betrayal. And it had all been a lie. The door opened behind him. His second-in-command, Park Junho, entered carrying a tablet. "We found her." Min Jae didn't turn. His reflection stared back at him from the rain-streaked window. Sharp jaw, cold eyes, the tiger tattoo a permanent reminder of the predator he had become. "Where?" "London. She's been there for 5 years. Teaching position. Small flat in Brixton." Junho hesitated. "Sir, there's something else." "Speak." Her father, Chief Adeyemi. "He's dying. End-stage liver failure. The family is gathering in Lagos." Another pause. "Our sources say they're planning something. Property transfers. Political maneuvering. They're trying to consolidate power before he dies." The silence stretched. Min Jae finally turned. The morning light caught the planes of his face, revealing the terrifying emptiness in his eyes. "Prepare the jet." "Which destination, sir?" "Both." Junho's expression flickered with something that might have been fear. In 15 years of service, he had never seen his boss like this, still as death, radiating the kind of controlled violence that preceded annihilation. "Sir, if I may ask, what are you planning?" Min Jae's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm going to burn her family to the ground." He walked past his lieutenant, pausing at the door. "And then I'm going to bring her home." London had never felt colder than it did that Thursday evening. Amara pulled her coat tighter against the wind as she walked from the tube station to her flat. The streets were busy with commuters, but she moved through them like a ghost, invisible, forgotten, exactly as she wanted to be. Her keys jingled as she climbed the narrow stairs to her third-floor flat. She didn't notice the black car parked across the street. She didn't notice the man watching from its shadows. Inside, she made tea on autopilot, English breakfast, a habit she had developed in her first months of exile when the nights stretched too long and the silence pressed too close. She graded papers while the radiator hummed. She pretended she wasn't listening for her phone to ring. At 9 o'clock it did.
Not her sister this time.
Unknown number. Amara let it ring. The voicemail notification appeared moments later. She pressed play without thinking, expecting another relative's voice dripping with false concern. Instead, she heard breathing.
Slow.
Measured. And then a voice she hadn't heard in 7 years. "I know the truth." 3 words. 3 words that collapsed the walls she had spent years building. Min Jae. How had he? Why was he? "I know what your father did. I know why you left." A pause. Rain in the background. The distant wail of a siren. "I know about my sister." Amara's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, phone pressed to her ear, tea growing cold in her forgotten hand. "I'm coming for you, Amara." The line went dead. For the first time in 7 years, she couldn't stop the tears. But whether they were from relief or terror, she couldn't say. Because Kang Min-jae had not said those words like a man planning a reunion. He had said them like a man planning a war. The rain started at midnight. Amara hadn't moved from her position on the floor. Her phone lay beside her, its screen dark, the voicemail already replayed 17 times. Each repetition revealed new details, the steel beneath his calm, the barely controlled fury in the spaces between words. He knew. After all this time, he finally knew. But knowing changed nothing. The damage was done.
His sister was dead.
Years had been stolen. The people she loved had been threatened. And the man leaving that voicemail wasn't the one she remembered, the one who had held her on rainy Seoul nights and whispered plans for their future against her hair. That man had believed she betrayed him. What kind of monster had her family's lies created? A knock shattered the silence. Amara froze. Another knock.
Soft.
Patient. The knock of someone who knew she was home and was willing to wait forever. She should call the police. She should stay silent and hope whoever it was went away. Instead, she found herself walking to the door. Her hand trembled as she reached for the lock. Amara. His voice. Through the door. Closer than the voicemail. Real in a way that made her chest ache. I know you're there. I can't hear your breathing. Of course he could. He had always been able to sense her presence, a predator attuned to the movements of the only prey that ever mattered. Open the door. She shouldn't.
She did.
And there he was. Kang Min-jae stood in her narrow hallway, rain dripping from his dark coat, water beading on the black fabric of his shirt. The years had changed him, sharper edges, deeper shadows beneath his eyes, a cruelty carved into the set of his mouth that hadn't been there before. The tattoo on his neck was new, or maybe she had simply never seen it in full, a tiger prowling through darkness, its eyes seeming to track her even in stillness. He looked at her. Just looked. No words. No movement. Just those obsidian eyes cataloging every change 7 years had wrought. The thinness of her face, the guardedness of her posture, the fear she couldn't quite hide. You're thinner. His first words to her in 7 years. You should eat more. Amara's breath caught. How did you find me? I never stopped looking. The words landed like blows. She took an involuntary step backward. That's not. Her voice cracked. You couldn't have. You believed I betrayed you. I believed what I was shown. He stepped forward, into her flat, filling the small space with his presence. I believed the evidence your family planted. I believed the silence you kept. I had no choice. You had every choice. His voice remained level, but his eyes blazed. You could have trusted me. You could have told me the truth. I would have protected you. They would have killed you. Let them try. The arrogance of it, the absolute certainty, made her want to scream. You don't understand, she whispered. They killed your sister, Min-jae. They killed her to send a message. And they told me if I ever spoke to you again, if I ever tried to explain, they would finish what they started. She went still. I know. He moved closer, and she realized with distant shock that she was crying. I know everything, Amara. Every lie. Every threat. Every time your father traded your happiness for his political survival. His hand rose. She flinched. But he only touched her cheek, a whisper of contact, fingertips tracing the path of her tears with devastating gentleness. I came here to tell you something. She couldn't speak. Your father is dying. His thumb brushed her lower lip, and she shuddered. Your family is gathering in Lagos to divide the empire he built on blood and betrayal. They're planning to cut you out entirely, to take everything while you hide in this. His eyes swept the flat with barely concealed disgust. This prison you've sentenced yourself to. I don't want their money. It's not about money. He stepped back, and the loss of contact felt like grief. It's about justice. Amara wrapped her arms around herself. What are you planning? I'm going to destroy them. The words hung in the air, cold and final. I'm going to dismantle everything your father built. I'm going to expose every crime, every bribe, every lie. I'm going to make sure the world sees exactly what the great Chief Adeyemi truly was. And then, his smile was sharp enough to cut. And then I'm going to make them beg you for forgiveness before I take away everything they have left. I can't let you do that. You can't stop me. Min-jae. 7 years. His voice dropped to something dangerous. I spent 7 years believing you chose to leave me. I spent 7 years becoming the monster they told you I was. I spent 7 years building an empire on the ashes of what we had, because I convinced myself that love was weakness and trust was suicide. He moved toward her again, and she backed into the wall. They took everything from me. My sister. My future. The only woman I ever.
He stopped.
His jaw worked. The silence between them held more weight than words ever could. I'm not asking your permission, he finally said. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You can stay here in your safe little exile and watch from a distance. Or you can come with me. Come with you? To Lagos. To Seoul. To wherever this war takes us. Her heart hammered. And be what? A weapon in your revenge?
No.
His eyes held hers, and for one moment, she saw past the monster to the man beneath. Wounded, furious, achingly lonely. Be the reason I remember mercy. The rain intensified outside. She should say no. She should close the door and lock it and never think about Kang Min-jae again. But the truth was simple and devastating. She had never stopped loving him, and watching him destroy her family sounded more like justice than sin. What happens after? She whispered. After? After the war. After the revenge. What happens to us? His smile faded. Something raw flickered in his eyes. I don't know. Honest words from a man who always had answers. I've spent 7 years learning to live without you. I don't remember how to exist any other way. Maybe that's our answer. Maybe. He stepped back. Or maybe we figure it out together. He turned toward the door. The jet leaves at 7. Heathrow, private terminal. He paused without looking back. If you're not there, I'll understand. But Amara? His voice dropped. Don't make me watch you disappear again. The door closed behind him. Amara sank to the floor, her chest heaving, her mind spinning with impossible choices. And in the parking lot below, Min-jae sat in the darkness of his car, watching her window, waiting to see if the light stayed on. It did. All night. Lagos sprawled beneath the morning sun like a wounded beast. From the tinted window of the Mercedes, Amara watched the city of her childhood pass in fragments, the gleaming towers of Victoria Island, the chaos of Oshodi Market, the dusty roads of mainland neighborhoods she had once been forbidden to visit. She hadn't been home in 5 years. It didn't feel like home anymore. Your sister's people spotted us at the airport. Junho's voice came from the front seat. They'll know you're here within the hour. Amara didn't respond. Her attention remained fixed on the window, on the familiar landmarks rendered foreign by years of absence. Beside her, Min-jae sat in perfect stillness. He hadn't touched her since London, hadn't spoken more than necessary, hadn't given any indication of what he was feeling. The intimacy of that midnight conversation had retreated behind walls of stone and ice. But she caught him watching her. Brief glances, when he thought she was distracted. His gaze tracking the movement of her hands, the tension in her shoulders, the way she pressed her fingers against the glass, as if trying to feel the heat of the Lagos sun through the barrier. He was cataloging her again, memorizing, the way he had done 7 years ago, in her father's garden. There's something you should know, she said quietly. He waited. My mother died. The words came flat, emptied of emotion by years of deliberate numbness. 3 years ago. Stroke. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I know. You. I told you. His voice was soft. I never stopped watching. The implications settled over her like a weight. 7 years of surveillance. 7 years of silent observation, even when he believed she had destroyed him. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting you. From what? From the enemies you didn't know you had. He finally turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. Your father's organization is dying, Amara. Vultures are circling. Half the politicians he controlled are looking for ways to distance themselves before the empire collapses. The other half are positioning to take what they can. And you? I'm the one who's been keeping them away. She went cold. Every threat, every blackmail attempt, every predator who thought you'd make useful leverage. His voice remained steady, almost bored, as if discussing weather instead of violence. My people handled them. Without telling me. You wanted distance. I gave you the illusion of it. An illusion. Bitter laughter escaped her. That's all anything has ever been, hasn't it? An illusion of choice. An illusion of freedom. An illusion that I could ever escape what my family created. You could have. His hand moved, not quite touching her, but close enough that she felt the heat of his skin. If you had come to me, if you had trusted me with the truth. Trust. The word tasted like ash. Your world runs on paranoia and blood. How was I supposed to trust that you could protect me from people willing to kill your own sister? The silence that followed was different. Dangerous. Min-jae's hand withdrew. His eyes went flat, the warmth of moments before replaced by the cold calculation she had glimpsed in London. You're right. She flinched at the softness of his voice. My world does run on paranoia and blood. And your family spilled both when they took Sujin from me. He turned back to the window. So when I burn them, remember, they taught me exactly how to do it. The car turned onto a familiar road. Amara's breath caught. The Adeyemi estate rose before them. White walls, manicured gardens, the sprawling compound that had housed generations of political power. It looked smaller than she remembered. Less impressive. Just another monument to corruption wrapped in the aesthetics of respectability. Are you ready? Min-jae asked. Does it matter? Yes. He looked at her, really looked, with the full weight of his attention. It matters to me. She met his gaze. And for the first time since London, she saw the boy she had fallen in love with, buried beneath layers of grief and rage and carefully constructed armor, but still there. Still waiting. I'm ready. The car stopped, and Amara Adeyemi stepped back into the life she had sworn to leave behind. The reunion was exactly as terrible as she expected. Adiz found her first, her older sister, all sharp angles and political smiles, descending the marble stairs of the family home like a queen greeting a prodigal subject. Amara. Air kisses that landed nowhere near her cheeks. We thought you might come. Father's been asking for you. Has he? Of course. You're still family after all. The lie was so practiced it almost sounded genuine. But Amara had spent 7 years stripping away illusions, and she recognized the calculation behind her sister's warmth. Adiz's eyes tracked to Min-jae, who stood 3 steps behind Amara like a shadow. And you've brought a guest. An old friend, Amara said. He insisted on paying his respects. How thoughtful. The temperature in the foyer dropped several degrees. Adiz knew exactly who Min-jae was. The Adeyemi family had spent years covering up their connection to the Jang family's assassination attempt. They had built entire fictions around Amara's departure, a mental breakdown, they had told society. She had needed treatment, rest, time away from the pressures of Lagos life. They had never expected the truth to walk through their front door. Father's in his study, Adiz said, her composure cracking at the edges. But I should warn you. The doctors have advised against stress. Any unexpected shocks could be dangerous for his condition. Min-jae smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We'll be careful, he said. I understand how fragile powerful men become when their empires start crumbling. Adiz's mask slipped entirely. Fear, raw and real, flashed across her features before she could suppress it. I'll let them know you're here. She fled up the stairs. Amara exhaled slowly. That could have gone worse. The day is young. Min-jae's hand brushed the small of her back, possessive, steadying, gone before she could react.
Come.
I want to see your father's face when he realizes what's about to happen. Chief Adeyemi's study had been her father's fortress for as long as Amara could remember. Dark wood paneling, shelves lined with law books he rarely read, a massive desk positioned to dominate anyone who sat across from it. The room smelled of cigar smoke and old money and the particular mustiness of secrets kept too long. Her father sat in his wheelchair by the window, a shell of the man who had once commanded rooms with a glance. Liver failure had reduced him to yellowed skin and trembling hands. His eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes that had watched her childhood with constant assessment, were dim now, clouded by medication and approaching death. He looked up when they entered. For a moment, recognition flickered. Amara. His voice cracked. You came, father. She didn't move closer. Behind her, Min-jae positioned himself near the door, close enough to watch, far enough to make her father feel the weight of his presence, without direct confrontation. I didn't think. Her father coughed wetly. After everything, I didn't think you would come. Neither did I. I wanted to explain. I know everything. The words hung between them. Chief Adeyemi's expression shifted, confusion first, then dawning horror as he registered Min-jae's presence for the first time. You. Me. Min-jae stepped forward, his shoes clicking against the marble floor. It's been a long time, Chief. Though I suppose you've been hoping I'd never discover what you truly did. Amara, whatever he's told you. He told me nothing. Her voice hardened. He showed me the evidence your people were foolish enough to keep. The payments to the Jang family. The communications coordinating the attack. The orders for your own daughter's exile. Her father's face crumpled. It should have given her satisfaction. Instead, she felt only emptiness. I did it to protect you, he whispered. That man, his world, it would have destroyed you. I couldn't let my daughter become a criminal's wife. So you made me a prisoner instead. A temporary solution. I thought with time, you would forget him. You would move on. You would be grateful. Grateful. The word tasted like poison. You killed his sister. You threatened to kill him. You stripped away my career, my reputation, my future. And you thought I would be grateful? The family. The family. She laughed, and the sound was ugly. Always the family. Every crime justified by legacy. Every betrayal excused by ambition. You never loved us, father. You only loved what we could give you. Chief Adeyemi's hand rose, trembling. That's not. It is. She stepped forward, looking down at the man who had once seemed invincible. And now you're dying, and your empire is falling apart, and you have nothing left except the knowledge that your own daughter will watch you burn. Silence. Then her father's eyes moved to Min-jae. What are you going to do? Min-jae smiled, cold, empty, terrifying. Everything. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of calculated destruction. Min-jae's people had spent years gathering intelligence on the Adeyemi operation. They knew every shell company, every bribed official, every offshore account hiding decades of stolen wealth. Now that intelligence became ammunition. Journalists received anonymous tips. Police departments discovered evidence of crimes that could no longer be hidden. Business partners suddenly found themselves under investigation. Political allies received reminders of exactly how much damaging information the Adeyemi family possessed, and how much safer it would be to distance themselves before the collapse. Adiz tried to fight back. She hired lawyers, held emergency meetings, attempted to rally the family's remaining support network. But Min-jae's resources dwarfed anything the Adeyemis could muster, and his patience had been refined by 7 years of cold fury. Every move she made, he anticipated. Every counter she attempted, he neutralized. By the third day, Amara watched her family empire crumble from the balcony of Min-jae's Lagos hotel suite, and she felt nothing but tired relief. It's almost over. His voice came from behind her. She didn't turn. Is it? The final evidence drops tomorrow. Financial fraud charges. Conspiracy to commit murder. By next week, your siblings will be too busy defending themselves to cause any more damage. And my father?
Silence.
Then, he won't see the trial. The doctors give him days.
She should feel something.
Grief, maybe. Or triumph. Some emotion appropriate to watching her own father's destruction. Instead, there was only emptiness. Why doesn't this feel like victory? Min-jae moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body in the evening air. Because revenge never does. His voice was quiet. I thought destroying them would give me peace. I thought watching your family pay for Sujin would fill the emptiness she left behind. It doesn't.
No.
He looked at her, that intense, cataloging gaze she had never learned to resist. It just reminds me of everything I lost. Your sister. You. The word hit like a physical blow. Min-jae. I spent 7 years building walls. He turned to face her fully, and she saw something vulnerable beneath his armor, something wounded and desperate and achingly human. I convinced myself that I didn't need you, that love was weakness, that the only things worth having were power and control. And now I'm standing next to you, watching my revenge play out exactly as planned, and all I can think about is whether you'll stay. Her breath caught. I destroyed your family, Amara. Not just for Sujin, for you, for what they took from us. For every night, I spent wondering if you ever loved me at all. I loved you. The confession escaped before she could stop it. I never stopped. Even when I thought you must hate me, even when I spent years trying to forget your face, I never stopped. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, fragile, almost painful to witness. Then stay. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I don't know who I am anymore. She turned back to the city lights, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. 7 years of hiding. 7 years of being no one. I built a life in London, small and quiet and safe. I don't know if I can be the person you remember. I'm not asking for that person. Then what are you asking for? His hand touched her shoulder, the first deliberate contact since London. She felt the warmth of him through her blouse, felt her body respond despite her mind's protests. Time. His voice dropped to something intimate. Give me time to prove that we can build something new. Something honest. Something without lies or manipulation or family shadows. You're asking me to trust you. Yes. After everything? Despite everything. She closed her eyes. 7 years of isolation. 7 years of fear and loneliness and carefully maintained distance. Could she really let him back in? Could she trust her own judgment after being so thoroughly destroyed by her family's betrayal? I need to think. His hand withdrew. When she finally turned, he had retreated to the far side of the balcony, his expression once again unreadable, his walls firmly back in place. But she had seen behind them, and that made everything more complicated. Her father died at dawn. Amara received the call in her own hotel room, a deliberate distance from Min-jae's suite that neither of them had acknowledged. Her sister's voice on the phone was cold, perfunctory, delivering the news like a business update. The funeral will be Thursday. You should come. Should I? He was still your father, Amara. Whatever happened between you, he was still family. The word landed like a slap. Family. She let the silence stretch. Is that what we're calling it now? Don't be dramatic. Father made mistakes, but he did what he thought was best. We all did. You helped him destroy my life, Fadiz. I helped him protect the family. There's a difference. Is there? Her sister's composure cracked slightly. Look, whatever that Korean gangster has told you. His name is Kang Min-jae. And he didn't tell me anything I didn't already know. He just provided proof. Proof can be fabricated. Not this proof. Silence. Then, are you coming to the funeral or not? Amara looked out the window at the Lagos skyline, golden in the early morning light. I'll be there. She hung up before her sister could respond. The funeral was a spectacle of hypocrisy. Politicians who had whispered about investigations stood at the graveside offering condolences. Business associates who had been scrambling to distance themselves suddenly appeared grief-stricken. The press gathered outside the cemetery, hungry for any sign of the family drama they had been following for days. Amara stood apart from her siblings, dressed in black, her face carefully blank. Min-jae was there. Not beside her. That would have been too provocative, too obvious. But she saw him at the edge of the crowd, half hidden in the shadow of an old oak tree, his dark suit blending with the mourning clothes around him. He was watching her. Always watching. The service ended. Mourners dispersed. Her siblings gathered around her father's grave for a final private moment, and Amara found herself walking toward them despite her better judgment. Adiz looked up first. "You came." "I said I would." "Yes, well." Her sister's eyes were red, from grief or exhaustion or anger. Amara couldn't tell. "That doesn't mean much anymore, does it? Your word hasn't been reliable in years." "My word was never the problem." Their brothers shifted uncomfortably. The youngest, Emmanuel, stepped forward, always the peacemaker. "Even now. Can we not do this here? Father just died surrounded by the empire he built on our sister's suffering." Adiz snapped. "And now she's standing there acting like she's the victim, when she's the one who brought that criminal to our doorstep." "He was already coming," Amara said quietly. "He's been planning this for years. I just arrived in time to watch." "You could have warned us." "Why would I?" The question hung in the air. Adiz's face twisted with something ugly. "Because we're your family."
No.
Amara felt the last threads of obligation snap. "You were people who shared my blood. You were people who could have protected me, who could have chosen my happiness over your ambition. Instead, you watched Father destroy my life, and you did nothing. We were protecting you. You were protecting yourselves." Her voice rose despite her control. "And now you're facing the consequences, and you want me to feel guilty? You want me to save you from the destruction you brought on yourselves?" "Amara."
No.
She stepped back. "I came to say goodbye to my father. That's done. Whatever happens to the rest of you, that's not my concern anymore." She turned and walked away. Behind her, she heard Adiz call out something harsh and wounded, but she didn't turn back. Min-jae fell into step beside her as she reached the cemetery gates. That was difficult. It was necessary. "Are you all right?" She stopped walking. The question, so simple, so unexpected, cracked something inside her.
No.
The admission came out broken. "I'm not all right. I haven't been all right in 7 years." And watching them bury him while they pretend they didn't know exactly what he did. Her voice failed. Min-jae's hand found hers.
He didn't speak.
Didn't offer comfort or platitudes or false reassurance. He simply held on. And somehow that was enough. They left Lagos that night. Min-jae's jet carried them north, away from the wreckage of her family, away from the grave of a father who had never truly loved her. But instead of London, he charted a course for Seoul. "I want to show you something," he said, when she questioned the destination. "Something I should have shown you years ago." "What?" He didn't answer. Seoul in autumn was exactly as she remembered. Crisp air, changing leaves, the particular energy of a city that never quite slept. Min-jae's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking the Han River. It was vast and cold and decorated with the aggressive minimalism of a man who had stripped away everything soft. But in one room, a small study off the main bedroom, she found something unexpected. Photographs. Dozens of them, covering an entire wall. Photographs of her. Not surveillance images, though she was sure those existed somewhere. These were different. Candid moments from their months together, before everything fell apart. Her laughing at a street market. Her sleeping in morning light. Her looking at him with an expression of such open love that it hurt to see now. And in the center of the wall, framed in simple black, a photograph of them together. The night they had decided to marry. Her hand rose without permission, fingers tracing the glass. "I couldn't get rid of them." His voice came from the doorway. "She didn't turn. Even when I believed you had betrayed me. Even when I convinced myself that everything we had was a lie." He moved closer. "I would come in here at night, and I would look at your face, and I would wonder if I had imagined what we had. Why keep them? Because the alternative was admitting you were really gone." She closed her eyes. "I have the same photographs." The confession surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. "Different ones, moments you didn't know I captured. I hid them when I left. Took them to London. Looked at them every night for the first year until I couldn't anymore." "Why did you stop?" "Because it hurt too much." She finally turned to face him. "Because every time I saw your face, I remembered what I had lost and what I had become, and how badly I wanted to tell you the truth." You could have found a way. They would have killed you.
You don't know that.
I couldn't risk it. Her voice broke. Min-jae, I loved you. I loved you more than I have ever loved anything in my life. And the thought of you dying because of me, because of my family's corruption, I couldn't bear it. So, you sacrificed yourself instead. I survived. Did you? He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the darkness in his eyes, the hunger he had stopped trying to hide. You survived, yes. You're breathing and working and existing. But have you truly lived? Have you let yourself feel anything real? Have you? The question stopped him. They stood in the center of his shrine to their lost love, surrounded by memories of who they used to be, and the silence between them held everything they had been afraid to say. I want to try, he said finally. I want to try to feel something real again. With you. Even after everything? Because of everything. His hand rose, hovering near her cheek, without quite touching. We've both spent years surviving. Maybe it's time we started living. I don't know if I can. Then let me teach you. His fingers finally made contact, a whisper against her cheekbone, her jaw, the curve of her throat. Let me remind you what it feels like to be loved. Her breath caught. Every instinct screamed for her to pull away, to maintain the protective distance she had cultivated for so long. But she was tired, so tired of being alone. Show me, she whispered. And when he kissed her, she stopped thinking about anything else. The world didn't end. She had expected something. Catastrophe, perhaps. The final proof that allowing herself to feel was a mistake. Instead, she woke in Min-jae's bed with morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, his arm heavy across her waist, his breath warm against her shoulder. He was already awake, watching her. You stayed, he murmured. Did you expect me to run? I've learned not to expect anything. She shifted to face him, studying the face she had once known better than her own. Lines had appeared around his eyes. A new scar traced his jaw, thin, almost invisible, but present. What happened here? She touched the scar. An argument with someone who thought they could take what was mine. Business. Always. She traced the line down to his throat, where the tiger tattoo emerged from beneath the sheets. The ink was beautiful, intricate, savage, nothing like the simple designs she remembered from 7 years ago. This is new. I got it the year you left. His voice was flat, but his eyes betrayed something deeper. A reminder. Of what? That softness is dangerous. That attachment destroys. That the only way to survive is to become the predator instead of the prey. Is that what you believe? He was quiet for a long moment. It's what I believed, he finally said. Now I'm not sure. What changed? His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. You came back. But peace, Amara was learning, was not something that came easily in Min-jae's world. 3 weeks after their return to Seoul, his past arrived at his doorstep. The woman was beautiful, the kind of cold, calculated beauty that came with money and breeding and the absolute certainty of one's place in the world. She appeared in Min-jae's penthouse without warning, admitted by staff who clearly knew better than to question her. Amara found her in the living room, examining the artwork with possessive familiarity. So, the woman turned, her eyes tracking Amara with barely concealed contempt. You're the one. Excuse me? The Nigerian woman. The one Min-jae has been obsessing over for years. Her English was perfect, her accent revealing expensive international education. I had hoped you would be more. Who are you? Yoon Seo-yeon. She smiled, sharp as a blade. Min-jae's fiancé. The word landed like a blow. Amara's face went carefully blank. I wasn't aware he had a fiancé. Most people aren't. The engagement was arranged after you disappeared, a business alliance between our families. The wedding was supposed to happen last spring, but Min-jae kept finding reasons to delay. Seo-yeon's eyes narrowed. Now I understand why. I think you should leave. I think you should understand something. She stepped closer, and her perfume, expensive, overwhelming, filled the space between them. Min-jae's world has rules. Alliances. Expectations. Whatever romantic fantasy you've imagined building with him, it will never survive the reality of who he is. That's not your decision to make. It's not yours either. Seo-yun smiled again. The families have spoken. The alliance will happen. Whether you're present for the wedding or not is entirely up to you. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Min-jae appeared in the doorway, his expression going cold as ice when he registered their visitor. Seo-yun. Darling. She turned to him with practiced warmth. I heard you finally brought your project home. I wanted to introduce myself. Get out. Min-jae. I said get out. The warmth in Seo-yun's expression curdled into something uglier. This isn't over, she said. The families have expectations. Your little rebellion won't change that. The engagement is dissolved. It has been for months. Does your family know that? Silence. Seo-yun smiled triumphantly. I thought not. She gathered her coat, moving toward the door. When you're done playing house with your exotic distraction, we should talk. The world you live in doesn't bend for sentiment, Min-jae. The sooner you remember that, the better. She swept out. The silence she left behind was devastating. Amara didn't look at him. Is it true, Amara? Is it true? Her voice cracked. Were you engaged? It was arranged. I never agreed. But you didn't end it. He didn't answer. And that silence told her everything she needed to know. She walked past him without meeting his eyes, into the bedroom they had shared, and began gathering her things. Don't do this. His voice followed her. Don't run again. I'm not running. I'm leaving. There's a difference? She whirled to face him. You asked me to trust you. You asked me to give you time to prove that we could build something real. And the entire time, you were engaged to another woman. An arrangement I never intended to honor. But you didn't end it. Her composure finally shattered. You kept it as a backup plan. You kept her waiting in the wings while you, what? Tested whether I was worth the trouble? That's not. I have spent 7 years having decisions made for me. 7 years being manipulated by people who claim to love me. And I swore that I would never let anyone do that to me again. I'm not manipulating you. You're withholding information and calling it protection. That's the same thing. He moved toward her, but she held up a hand. Don't. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Min-jae's expression went blank, the cold, empty mask she remembered from their first meeting in Lagos. The walls slamming back into place. If that's what you want. It's not what I want. Her voice broke on the words. It's what I need. She walked past him, and this time, he didn't try to stop her. The hotel was cold and empty, and nothing like the life she had briefly imagined. Amara sat by the window, watching Seoul's lights blur through rain-streaked glass, and wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. She had been so certain. But alone in the darkness, doubt crept in. Min-jae had lied, or at least admitted. That was true. But hadn't she done the same? Hadn't she kept secrets for years? Justified them with protection and love and all the same rationalizations he had used? The difference was that her lies had been forced upon her. His had been chosen, or had they? She didn't understand his world, not fully. The business alliances, the family expectations, the careful web of obligations that bound someone like him. Maybe dissolving the engagement wasn't as simple as a conversation. Maybe he had been trying to protect her from complications she couldn't comprehend. Or maybe she was making excuses for a man who would always prioritize power over honesty. Her phone buzzed. A message from a number she didn't recognize. He ended it. She stared at the words. Another message appeared. 2 months ago, after you called from Lagos. He dissolved the alliance and paid the penalty, $40 million. The Yoon family wanted blood. He gave them bankruptcy instead. He was going to tell you. Tonight. Don't make him regret choosing you. The message history cleared itself. Amara sat in the darkness, and something heavy and painful shifted in her chest.
She went back.
The penthouse was quiet when she entered. No guards challenged her. Of course they didn't. They had been instructed to let her pass. She found him in the study. The photograph wall. He stood with his back to the door, Still in the clothes he had worn earlier, his shoulders carrying a weight she could see even from across the room. I should have told you.
His voice was raw.
About Seoyeon. About the engagement. About all of it. He didn't turn. I told myself I was protecting you, that you had enough to deal with, that introducing more complications would only hurt you. But that was a lie I told myself. Why? Because I was afraid. The admission came out broken. Afraid that if you knew how deep this world goes, how impossible it is to simply walk away from obligations and alliances, you would realize I'm not worth the trouble. Min-jae. I ended it. He finally turned, and she saw the devastation in his eyes, the vulnerability he had spent years learning to hide. 2 months ago, I paid the penalty. I made enemies of people I needed as allies. Because I would rather burn every bridge in this world than build a future without you in it. I know. He went still. I know, she repeated.
Someone sent me a message.
They told me what you did.
Who?
I don't know. But it doesn't matter. She moved toward him. What matters is that I spent 7 years making decisions based on fear. 7 years keeping secrets because I convinced myself I was protecting the people I loved. And when you did the same thing, you had every right to be angry. I did. She stopped in front of him. But I also had a choice about how to respond. And I chose to run. You came back. I came back. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Amara reached up, her fingers finding the scar on his jaw, tracing it the way she had that first morning. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to trust without fear, or love without waiting for betrayal. I spent too long surviving to remember how to live. Then we learned together. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. His hand covered hers, pressing her palm against his cheek. Stay, he whispered. Not because I need you, though I do. Not because I can't survive without you, though I'm not sure I can.
Stay, because you want to.
Stay because you believe we're worth the fight. She looked at him. This man who had spent 7 years becoming a monster because of her family's lies. This man who had burned $40 million to free himself from an alliance he never wanted. This man who kept her photographs in a secret room because he couldn't bear to let her go. I believe, she said finally. I believe we're worth it. And when he kissed her, she felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years.
Hope.
But the world, as always, had other plans. The attack came 3 nights later. Amara woke to the sound of glass shattering, a sound that shouldn't have been possible in Min-jae's fortress of a penthouse. She reached for him in the darkness. The bed was empty. Min-jae? No answer. She moved toward the door, heart hammering, and found herself face to face with a man she didn't recognize.
Tall. Lean.
A tiger tattoo on his neck. Different from Min-jae's, twisted and corrupted. The Jang family sends their regards. His hand rose, and the world went black. What happens when Min-jae discovers Amara has been taken by the same family that killed his sister? How far will he go to bring her back? And what price will he pay for loving a woman the world keeps trying to tear away? Please like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned, because Min-jae is about to make the most ruthless decision of his life. She woke to cold. Not the comfortable chill of air conditioning. This was different.
Damp.
Ancient. The kind of cold that seeped into bones and settled there like a warning. Amara's eyes opened to darkness, then slowly adjusted to dim light filtering through a grated window somewhere above her. Stone walls. Concrete floor. The smell of rust and something older, something that spoke of violence done and violence yet to come. Her wrists burned. She looked down and found them bound with zip ties, tight enough to cut circulation, positioned in front of her rather than behind. A small mercy. Or perhaps simply practicality. Whoever had taken her wanted her conscious. Aware. Afraid. The last thing she remembered was the man's face. The corrupted tiger tattoo. The words that had preceded the blow that stole her consciousness. The Jang family sends their regards. Min-jae had told her about them. The rival syndicate that had been trying to destroy the Kong Empire for decades. The family her father had contacted 7 years ago when he needed someone willing to kill to keep his daughter away from a Korean crime lord. The family that had murdered Soo-jin. And now they had her. Footsteps echoed from somewhere beyond the heavy door at the far end of the room. Amara forced herself upright, ignoring the screaming pain in her head, the nausea threatening to overwhelm her. She would not be found cowering. Whatever happened next, she would face it standing. The door opened. The man who entered was older than she expected, 60, perhaps, with silver hair swept back from a face that might have been handsome before cruelty carved permanent lines into its architecture. He walked with the careful precision of someone accustomed to power, flanked by 2 guards who positioned themselves at the door like statues. Miss Adeyemi. His English was accented but clear. Or should I say, the future Mrs. Calm? Though I suppose that wedding will never happen now. Who are you? Jang Taewon. He smiled, and the expression contained nothing resembling warmth. I believe you're familiar with my family's work. We helped your father solve a problem 7 years ago. You murdered an innocent woman. Innocent. He seemed to taste the word, finding it amusing. Soo-jin Kong was many things, but innocent was not among them. She was a Kong. That made her complicit. She was 23 years old. And your point? Amara's hands trembled in their bindings, but her voice remained steady. My point is that you're a monster. Monsters are made, Miss Adeyemi, not born. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive, inappropriate for a dungeon. Your father taught me that lesson well. He was so eager to protect his precious political legacy that he handed us everything we needed to strike at Min-jae's heart. What do you want? What I've always wanted. His eyes glittered with something fevered, something obsessive. The destruction of the Kong Syndicate. The complete annihilation of everything Min-jae has built. And now, thanks to you, I finally have the leverage to achieve it. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. You're going to use me as bait. Bait. Bargaining chip. Symbol of everything he stands to lose. Taewon's smile widened. Min-jae's greatest weakness was always his heart. He pretended to be cold, ruthless, untouchable. But we always knew the truth. We knew that somewhere beneath all that ice, he was still the boy who cried when his mother died. He'll kill you. He'll try. Taewon turned away, moving toward the door. But first, he'll have to find you. And by the time he does, I'll have taken everything else from him. He paused at the threshold. Get comfortable, Miss Adeyemi. You're going to be here for a while. The door closed, and Amara was alone with the cold and the dark and the terrifying knowledge that she had become the weapon her father's enemies would use to destroy the man she loved. 12 hours earlier, Min-jae had been dreaming. The dream was always the same, Amara in white, walking toward him down an aisle of cherry blossoms, her smile brighter than any future he had allowed himself to imagine. In the dream, there were no enemies, no family complications, no blood debts demanding payment. In the dream, they were just 2 people who had found their way back to each other. He woke to Junho's hand on his shoulder and knew instantly that something was wrong. Sir. 1 word. That was all it took. Min-jae sat up, his hand automatically reaching for the space beside him. Empty. The sheets were cold. Where is she? Gone. Junho's face was gray in the dim light. Security footage shows 3 men entering through the service entrance at 3:47 a.m. They bypassed our systems. Inside help, most likely. They had her out of the building within 4 minutes. Min-jae's blood turned to ice. Who? We're still confirming, but the evidence points to the Jangs. Not a question. Junho nodded slowly. One of the men had their mark. The corrupted tiger. For a long moment, Min-jae didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't do anything that might release the volcanic pressure building behind his carefully constructed walls. Then he stood. His movements were slow, deliberate, the movements of a man who had passed beyond ordinary fury into something far more dangerous. Call everyone in. Sir. Everyone. He pulled on clothes without looking at them. Every resource. Every contact. every favor we're owed, and every threat we can make. I want to know where they've taken her within the hour. And if we can't find her that quickly? Min-jae paused at the door. When he turned, Jun-ho took an involuntary step backward. The man standing before him was not Kang Min-jae, the calculated businessman. Not even Kang Min-jae, the ruthless syndicate leader. This was something else entirely. Something that had been waiting 7 years for permission to emerge. Then we start burning things until someone talks. The Seoul underworld learned quickly that something had changed. Within hours, Min-jae's people had descended on every Jang-connected business in the city. Not with violence, not yet, but with the promise of it. Information gathered. Pressure applied. Silent reminders that the Black Tiger of Seoul had been patient for many years, and patience had finally run out. By noon, 3 Jang lieutenants had disappeared. By evening, 2 of them had been found, alive, but permanently convinced that silence was not worth the cost. The 3rd was still being questioned. Min-jae watched the interrogation from behind one-way glass, his expression revealing nothing. His lieutenant had been thorough. The man strapped to the chair had already given up everything he knew about standard Jang operations. But he claimed to know nothing about the kidnapping. He's telling the truth. Jun-ho appeared at Min-jae's shoulder. Low-level. Not trusted with sensitive information. Then he's useless. Sir. Find someone higher. We're trying. But the Jangs have gone to ground. Taewon hasn't been seen at any of his usual locations. His inner circle has vanished. They're hiding her somewhere. Obviously. Min-jae's hand closed around the glass of whiskey someone had placed beside him. He hadn't touched it, but now his fingers tightened until the crystal creaked. 7 years ago, they killed my sister because her father wanted to keep his daughter away from me. Now they've taken Amara because he stopped. Breathed. Because I made the mistake of loving her openly. This isn't your fault. Of course it is. He released the glass before it shattered. Everything that happens to the people I love is my fault. That's the nature of this world. The nature of being who I am. What are you going to do? Min-jae was quiet for a long moment, watching the broken man in the interrogation room struggle against restraints that would never give. Whatever I have to. The first lead came at midnight, not from torture, but from technology. One of Min-jae's hackers had been tracking Jang financial movements for months. Most of it was standard, money laundering, legitimate business fronts, the usual architecture of organized crime. But 3 days before Amara's kidnapping, a significant sum had been transferred to a property company that owned a single asset, an abandoned fish processing facility on the coast, 2 hours from Seoul. The kind of place perfect for holding someone you didn't want found. It could be a trap. Jun-ho studied the satellite imagery, his face grim. They know we'll be looking. They might want us to find this. Of course it's a trap. Min-jae pulled on his jacket, checking the weapons concealed within its tailored lines. The question is whether we spring it anyway. And the answer? Min-jae looked at him. Really looked, with the full weight of everything he had become. She's in there. Alone. Afraid. Waiting for someone to come. We could send a team first. Scout the location.
No.
He moved toward the door. I've spent 7 years letting other people protect what matters to me. 7 years believing that distance was the same as safety. He paused at the threshold. Not anymore. The coast road was empty at 3 a.m. Min-jae drove alone. Against advice, against protocol, against every rule he had established for his own protection. His people followed at a distance, ready to move when he gave the signal, but this first approach had to be his. Had to be personal. The fish processing facility loomed against the night sky, its massive silhouette broken by years of neglect. Windows shattered, walls crumbling. The perfect cover for activities no one wanted discovered. He parked a quarter-mile away and continued on foot. The salt air filled his lungs, sharp and cold, carrying the distant crash of waves against rock. Somewhere in the darkness, he heard voices, guards, most likely, positioned at the perimeter. He had expected that. What he hadn't expected was the figure waiting at the facility's main entrance. Jang Taewon stood in a pool of industrial light, perfectly composed, as if he had been expecting this moment for years. Perhaps he had. Min-jae. The older man's voice carried across the distance between them. I wonder how long it would take you to find us. Where is she?
Safe.
For now. Taewon stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. Though I should warn you, her continued safety depends entirely on how this conversation proceeds. What do you want? The same thing I've wanted for 30 years. The destruction of the Kong Syndicate. He smiled. But I'm willing to negotiate terms.
Speak.
Everything. Your territories. Your businesses. Your contacts. Everything you've built, transferred to Jang control within 48 hours. Taewon's eyes glittered. In exchange, I'll let her live. And if I refuse, then I'll send her back to you in pieces. Starting with her hands, she won't need those if she's not going to be signing any marriage certificates. Something cold and terrible uncoiled in Min-jae's chest. He had spent years learning to control his emotions. Years building walls that nothing could penetrate. Years convincing himself that the monster inside him was a tool to be used, not a master to be served. But hearing this man threaten to mutilate the woman he loved, the monster stirred. You know I can't agree to that. I know you'll pretend to refuse. You'll posture and threaten and play the cold syndicate leader. Taewon shrugged. But we both know the truth. You love her. You've always loved her. And love makes men weak. You're right. Taewon blinked, surprised by the admission. Love does make men weak. Min-jae continued, his voice dropping to something soft. Something dangerous. It makes us hesitate when we should strike. It makes us offer mercy when we should offer death. It makes us believe that monsters like you might have some shred of humanity worth preserving. He stepped forward. But here's what you don't understand about loving someone, Taewon. It doesn't just make you weak. It makes you willing to become something far worse than weak to protect them. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you what's going to happen. Another step. You're going to take me to Amara. You're going to release her unharmed. And then you're going to watch while I burn everything you've ever built to the ground. And if I refuse? Min-jae smiled. It was the smile that had earned him his reputation. The smile that made hardened criminals flinch. The smile of a man who had looked into the darkness and decided to make it his home. Then I won't wait for your people to send her back in pieces. I'll come in there myself and take her. And everyone who stands in my way will learn exactly why they used to call my father the Butcher of Busan. The silence stretched. Then Taewon laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that carried no humor. You think you can intimidate me? I've been in this business since before you were born. I've survived wars that would have broken lesser men. You survived because no one cared enough to truly destroy you. Because the cost of ending you was higher than the cost of tolerating your existence. Min-jae's voice dropped to a whisper. But you made a mistake, Taewon. You touched something I care about. And now. He pulled back his jacket, revealing the gun holstered at his hip. Not reaching for it. Not yet. Just reminding everyone present that violence was one decision away. Now the cost doesn't matter anymore. Inside the facility, Amara heard the distant sounds of confrontation and felt hope spark in her chest. He had come. Of course he had come. She had never truly doubted it, even in her darkest moments of captivity, even when Taewon's guards had made it clear that no rescue was expected to succeed. Min-jae would move heaven and earth to find her. And whoever stood in his way would regret it. But hope was not the same as certainty. And the men guarding her door showed no signs of standing down. Sounds like your boyfriend finally arrived. One of them, the one with the corrupted tiger tattoo who had taken her from Min-jae's penthouse, laughed unpleasantly. Too bad he won't make it past the perimeter. You don't know him. I know his type. Thinks he's invincible because he's got money and muscle. The guard moved closer, and Amara forced herself not to flinch. But this isn't Seoul. This is Jang territory. And here, the Kangs don't get to make the rules.
He'll kill you.
Maybe. The guard shrugged. But not before we kill you. A sound from outside. Sharp, sudden.
Gunfire.
The guards exchanged glances, sudden uncertainty breaking through their confidence. Stay with her, the first one ordered. I'll check. He didn't finish the sentence. The door exploded inward, and Kang Min-jae stepped through the wreckage like a nightmare given form. Blood spattered his white shirt. His face was marble cold, revealing nothing of the violence he had just committed. But his eyes burned with something ancient and terrible. The guard who had threatened Amara reached for his weapon. He never touched it. Min-jae moved like smoke, fluid, inevitable, impossible to track. One moment he was at the door. The next, the guard was on the ground, his arm bent at an angle arms weren't meant to bend, his scream cut short by the pressure of Min-jae's foot on his throat. Where are the others? The question was directed at Amara, but his eyes never left the man beneath him. 3 more. They left when the shooting started. Good. He removed his foot from the guard's throat, but before the man could recover, Min-jae's gun was against his temple. How many more inside? I don't. The gun pressed harder. 12. 12 more, plus Taewon. Where? Main processing floor. They're waiting. It's a trap. I know. 1 shot. The guard went still. Amara should have been horrified. Should have felt something at watching a man die so casually, so efficiently, so close to her bound hands. Instead, she felt only relief. Min-jae was at her side in moments, a knife appearing from somewhere to slice through her restraints. His hands, the same hands that had just ended a life, were impossibly gentle as they checked her wrists for damage. Are you hurt?
No.
Just scared. You're safe now. Min-jae. Don't. His voice cracked, just slightly. Don't say anything yet. I need to get you out of here first. Taewon. Will be dealt with. He pulled her to her feet, supporting her weight when her legs threatened to give. But first, you need to be somewhere he can never reach you again. What are you going to do? He looked at her, really looked, with all the walls down and all the truth exposed. Whatever I have to. The escape should have been impossible. 12 guards. A facility designed to prevent exactly what they were attempting. Taewon somewhere in the darkness, surely aware by now that his leverage was about to disappear. But Min-jae moved through obstacles like water through rock, finding paths where none should exist, anticipating threats before they materialized, eliminating resistance with the cold efficiency of a man who had spent his life preparing for exactly this moment. Amara lost track of how many bodies they passed. She lost track of whether she should care. What she remembered later was his hand in hers, never letting go, never allowing distance between them, anchoring her to reality even as the world dissolved into blood and shadow. They emerged into salt air and starlight, and for one perfect moment, everything was still. Then the gunshot. Amara felt the impact before she heard it. Min-jae's body jerking, his grip on her hand tightening convulsively, his exhale carrying a sound that wasn't quite pain. Run. Min-jae. Run. He pushed her toward the darkness, toward the road where his people would be waiting, and turned to face whatever was coming. Amara ran. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed, and the facility was nothing but a distant glow against the night sky. She ran until arms caught her. Junho, his face stark with fear, his questions dying when he saw the blood on her clothes. Not her blood. His. We have to go back. The words tore from her throat. He's still in there, he was shot. Our people are moving in now. Junho's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his terror. We'll get him out. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. He guided her toward a waiting vehicle. Min-jae gave us orders before he went in. If anything happened to him, your safety was the priority. Nothing else matters until you're secure. He matters. Yes. Junho met her eyes. Which is why he made sure you'd be protected, no matter what happened to him. The vehicle door closed. The engine started. And Amara watched the facility shrink in the distance, praying to gods she had stopped believing in that the man she loved would survive the night. The waiting was the worst part. Min-jae's people had taken her to a safe house, a nondescript apartment in a quiet Seoul neighborhood, far from anything connected to Kang or Jang operations. Armed guards at every entrance. Medical staff on standby. Everything arranged with the terrifying efficiency of an organization accustomed to crisis. But no one would tell her anything. Hours passed. Dawn came. Still nothing. Amara paced the small living room, her mind cycling through every terrible possibility. She had seen the impact of that bullet, seen the way he had staggered, seen the blood blooming dark against his white shirt. He could be dying. He could already be dead. And she was here, safe and useless, while the man who had moved heaven and earth to find her bled out in some coastal warehouse. The door opened. Junho entered, his face gray with exhaustion but his eyes held something that might have been relief. He's alive. Amara's legs gave out. She caught herself on the arm of a chair, breath heaving, tears she hadn't known she was holding back suddenly streaming down her face. Where is he? Hospital. Private facility, our doctors. Junho hesitated. The bullet hit his shoulder. Significant blood loss, but no vital organs. He's out of surgery and stable. I need to see him. That's not advisable. I need to see him. Junho studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her expression must have convinced him that argument was futile. I'll take you. But there's something you should know first. What? Taewon is dead. Min-jae killed him before the extraction team arrived. His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. The Jang Syndicate is in chaos. Without Taewon's leadership, they're falling apart. Good. The word surprised them both. But Amara meant it. Every syllable. Good, she repeated. They killed his sister. They kidnapped me. They tried to destroy everything he built. Her jaw tightened. They deserved worse than a quick death. Junho's expression shifted, something like respect entering his eyes. He said you were stronger than you looked. He was right. The hospital room was quiet when she entered. White walls. Monitoring equipment. The soft beep of machines tracking vital signs. And in the center of it all, looking small and mortal in a way she had never seen him, Min-jae. His eyes were closed. Bandages wrapped his shoulder, visible beneath the hospital gown. His face was pale, hollowed by blood loss and surgery and the weight of everything that had happened. But he was breathing.
Alive.
Here. Amara pulled a chair to his bedside and took his hand, the one not connected to 4 lines and monitoring equipment. His fingers were cold, but they twitched at her touch. His eyes opened. For a moment, confusion clouded his gaze. Then recognition. Then something softer, something that looked like peace. You're here. Where else would I be? Safe. His voice was rough, drugged. Told Junho to keep you safe.
He did.
But I needed to see you. Dangerous. I don't care. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Stubborn. You love that about me. I love everything about you. The words came out slurred, softened by medication, but their impact hit like a physical blow. Min-jae. Should have said it sooner. His eyes were drifting closed again. Should have said it every day. Wasted so much time being afraid. We both did. No more. His fingers tightened around hers. No more fear. No more secrets. No more running. No more running, she agreed. His eyes closed fully, but the grip on her hand remained. And Amara sat beside him, watching the rise and fall of his chest, and allowed herself to believe that maybe, finally, they had found their way home. Recovery was slow. The bullet had done more damage than the initial reports suggested. Torn muscle, nicked bone, the kind of injury that would leave lasting scars even after the wound healed. Min-jae spent 2 weeks in the hospital, chafing at every restriction, fighting every order to rest. Amara stayed with him through all of it. She learned to read his moods, when the pain medication made him soft and vulnerable, when frustration sharpened his edges, when the weight of empire pressed down, and he needed silence more than comfort. She learned the rhythms of his world, too. The endless stream of lieutenants and advisors seeking guidance. The constant flow of information about Jang collapse and Kong consolidation. The quiet conversations about what came next, now that their greatest enemy had been destroyed. And slowly, carefully, she began to find her place within it. You don't have to do this. Min-jae watched her from his hospital bed as she reviewed business documents Junho had brought for signature. My world isn't. Your world is my world now. She didn't look up from the documents. Whether I want it to be or not. You could leave. Go back to London. Pretend none of this happened. Could I? The question hung between them. Taewon is dead, but the Jangs still exist. Weakened, but not destroyed. They'll want revenge eventually. She finally met his eyes. And even if they didn't, I'm connected to you now. Everyone knows it. Leaving wouldn't make me safe. It would just make me an easier target. So you're staying because it's practical? I'm staying because I love you. She set down the documents. I'm staying because watching you almost die made me realize that I would rather face 1,000 dangers with you than live one safe day without you. Something shifted in his expression, the walls crumbling, the armor falling away. I don't deserve you. Probably not. She moved to sit beside him on the bed. But you're stuck with me anyway. His hand found her cheek, thumb tracing the line of her jaw. Marry me. The words came out raw, unplanned, carrying none of the careful calculation that usually marked his speech. Amara's breath caught. Min-jae. Not because of obligation. Not because of family alliances or political convenience. His eyes burned into hers. Because I spent 7 years without you, and I refuse to spend another day uncertain about where we stand. We've only just found each other again. We've been finding each other for 7 years. His voice dropped. Every moment I spent becoming harder, colder, more ruthless. I was looking for you. Every empire I built, every enemy I destroyed, it was all so that when I finally found you again, I would be strong enough to keep you. And now I need to know. His hand trembled against her skin. Will you stay? Not just for today. Forever. The word hung in the air, terrifying and beautiful and impossible to ignore. Forever is a long time. I know. There will be more enemies. More danger. More moments when we don't know if we'll survive. I know. Your world is violent and complicated and nothing like anything I imagined for my life. I know. His jaw tightened. If you need time to think. Yes. He went still. Yes, I'll marry you. For a moment, he didn't react, as if the word couldn't penetrate the layers of armor he had constructed around his heart. Then his hand slid into her hair, pulling her close, and he kissed her with the desperation of a man who had finally stopped running. When they broke apart, his forehead resting against hers, Amara laughed, soft and wondering and free. We're really doing this? We're really doing this. Your world is going to have opinions about you marrying a Nigerian woman. My world can adjust its opinions or face the consequences. His voice hardened with familiar steel. Anyone who objects to you becomes my enemy. That's the only opinion that matters. Romantic. Practical. But he was smiling, a real smile, the kind she remembered from 7 years ago. Though, I suppose romance isn't entirely off the table. Show me. He kissed her again. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, the future felt like something to anticipate rather than fear. The wedding happened 6 months later. Not a small affair. Min-jae's position required spectacle, and Amara had discovered that she no longer feared attention. They married in Seoul, in a ceremony that blended Nigerian traditions with Korean formality, watched by hundreds of guests who represented the complicated reality of their joined worlds. Amara wore white and gold, her dress designed by a Lagos fashion house that had once served her mother. Her father's family was not invited, but a few cousins who had never participated in his crimes attended, their presence a reminder that blood ties could be both weapon and blessing. Min-jae wore black because he was incapable of wearing anything else. But his expression when she walked toward him, that was pure color. Joy and terror and desperate hope all tangled together in the face of a man who had spent years convincing himself he would never feel anything again. When they exchanged vows, Amara heard the tremor in his voice that no one else would detect. When she promised forever, she saw the tears he would never acknowledge gathering at the corners of his eyes. And when he kissed her, in front of everyone, claiming her publicly in the way his world required, She felt the weight of everything they had survived transform into something lighter. Hope. Future. Home. The reception lasted until dawn. At some point, Min-jae pulled her away from the crowds, through hidden corridors, up private elevators, onto a rooftop garden that overlooked Seoul's glittering expanse. I wanted to show you something. More surprises? This one's different. He led her to the garden's edge, where a small bench sat beneath a cherry tree, impossibly blooming, clearly maintained by careful intervention. This is where I used to come when I couldn't sleep. His voice was quiet. After you left. After Sujin died. When everything felt impossible and the only choice was to keep moving forward or stop entirely. What did you do up here? Remembered. His hand found hers. Looked at the city I was building my empire across. Told myself that power would fill the emptiness you left behind. Did it?
No.
He turned to face her, and in the soft light of approaching dawn, he looked younger.
Softer.
The man she had fallen in love with 7 years ago, finally allowed to exist again. Nothing filled it. Nothing will ever fill it except you. Min-jae. I need to say this. He pressed a finger to her lips. I spent years becoming something terrible. Something that scared me sometimes when I looked too closely at what I was capable of. And I told myself it was necessary, that the world required monsters, and I might as well be the one holding the leash. And now I understand what I was really doing. His eyes held hers. I was building something strong enough to protect you when I found you again. Building walls high enough to keep you safe. Becoming something powerful enough that no one would ever be able to hurt you the way your family did. That's not your responsibility. It is now. His hand cupped her face. You're mine, Amara. My wife. My family. The only person in this world whose safety matters more than my own survival. That's terrifying. Yes. He smiled. Get used to it. She laughed despite herself. I suppose I'll have to. You will. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as the first light of dawn painted Seoul in shades of gold and rose. Forever, remember? Forever. The words settled over them like a promise. And standing on that rooftop, wrapped in the arms of a man the world called a monster, Amara Adeyemi finally understood what it meant to be home. 3 years later, the Kong Empire had transformed. Not in its power, that remained absolute, unchallenged by rivals who had learned the cost of crossing its boundaries, but in its character. Under Min-jae's leadership, the syndicate had shifted away from its most violent operations. Legitimate businesses expanded. Criminal enterprises were restructured to minimize civilian harm. The reputation of the Black Tiger evolved from terror to something more complex, fear mixed with respect, ruthlessness tempered by unexpected honor. Amara's influence, his enemies whispered. They weren't wrong. She had found her place in his world, not as a passive ornament, but as a partner. Her intelligence, her education, her understanding of both Nigerian and Korean culture made her invaluable in negotiations that crossed borders. Her compassion balanced his calculation. Her warmth reminded him of the humanity he had nearly lost. And her presence reminded everyone that Kong Min-jae, the monster of Seoul, had one weakness that no amount of power could protect. He had tried to hide it in the beginning, tried to keep her separate from business, insulated from danger. She had refused. If they're going to use me against you anyway, she had told him, I might as well understand what I'm dealing with. She had learned quickly. And now, 3 years into their marriage, she sat beside him in meetings with international contacts. She reviewed security protocols and challenged decisions that seemed unnecessarily brutal. She pushed back when his darkness threatened to consume him, and held him close when the weight of empire became too heavy to bear alone. She had become his conscience, his anchor, his reason to believe that redemption was possible, even for men like him. The news came on a quiet Thursday afternoon. Amara was in their Seoul penthouse, reviewing reports from a charitable foundation they had established in Sujin's memory, when the doctor called. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, she sat in silence for a long time, her hand pressed against her stomach, tears streaming down her face. Min-jae found her there an hour later, still crying, still silent, the phone still clutched in her hand. What happened? His voice was sharp with immediate fear. Are you hurt? Did someone? I'm pregnant. The words stopped him cold. He stared at her, processing, recalibrating, and then his face did something she had never seen before. It crumpled. Kang Min-jae, the black tiger of Seoul, dropped to his knees before his wife and buried his face against her stomach, his shoulders shaking with sobs he had held back for decades. Amara's hands found his hair, stroking gently, her own tears falling into the silver strands that had begun appearing at his temples. I never thought, his voice broke. I convinced myself I didn't want. I know.
A child.
Our child. He looked up at her, and his eyes held something she had never seen there before. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Amara. I know, she repeated. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear, and they stayed that way until the sun set and the city lights flickered to life beyond their windows. That night, he traced patterns on her still flat stomach and whispered promises in Korean and English, promises of protection and love and a future he had never allowed himself to imagine. I will be different, he swore. Not my father. Not the monster I became. You already are different. I can be better. His hand pressed against her skin. For both of you. And Amara believed him. The baby arrived in spring, a girl with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn will. They named her Soo-jin. Min-jae held his daughter for the first time with hands that had ended countless lives, and something inside him broke open. A door he had sealed decades ago, finally unlocked by the weight of a 7-pound child. She's perfect. His voice was rough. She's ours. He looked at Amara, exhausted, radiant, looking at him with an expression that contained their entire history. 7 years of separation, violence and loss and the destruction of everything they had once been. And somehow, impossibly, they had found their way here. To this moment. To this family. To a future that felt like redemption. Thank you. The words came out broken. For what? For coming back. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers while his daughter slept against his chest. For trusting me. For believing I could be something more than what I had become. You always were more. She squeezed his hand. You just needed someone to remind you. He kissed her then, soft, grateful, full of promises he intended to spend a lifetime keeping. And in the quiet of the hospital room, surrounded by monitors and flowers and the distant sounds of Seoul, Kang Min-jae finally understood what his father had never learned. Power was meaningless without someone to share it with. Empires crumbled. Enemies rose and fell. The world kept turning regardless of who controlled its shadows. But love. Love was the only thing worth killing for. The only thing worth dying for. The only thing that made any of it matter. Years later, when their daughter was old enough to ask about the tiger tattoo on her father's neck, Min-jae told her a story. He told her about a garden in Lagos and a woman in a cream silk dress. He told her about love lost and found and lost again. He told her about monsters and redemption and the terrible things good people sometimes do to protect what matters. He told her about her Aunt Soo-jin, who had died too young, and her grandfather in Lagos, who had made unforgivable choices. He told her about the years he spent alone, believing that he had lost everything. And he told her about the woman who had come back, who had trusted him despite every reason not to, who had seen the man beneath the monster and chosen to love him anyway. Your mother saved me, he said, watching his daughter's eyes widen with the gravity of his words. I spent years building walls to keep everyone out, and she climbed every single one. Weren't you scared? Terrified? He smiled. Still am sometimes. Of what? Of losing her. Losing you. Losing this. He gestured at their home, at the life they had built, at everything that mattered. All of it. But you're the black tiger. His daughter's voice held the absolute certainty of childhood. You're not afraid of anything. Everyone is afraid of something, little one. He pulled her close. The trick is finding something worth being brave for. Like Mama? Exactly like Mama. From the doorway, Amara watched them, her husband and her daughter, shadows of violence and rays of light, somehow coexisting in the same improbable family. She had walked into his world with eyes open, knowing the cost. And she had discovered that some prices were worth paying. For love, for family, for the chance to build something new from the ashes of everything old. Min-jae looked up and caught her watching. His smile transformed his face, still dangerous, still capable of terrible things, but softened now by something that looked remarkably like happiness. "Come here," he said. She went, and in their embrace, surrounded by the complicated life they had built together, Amara Adeyemi finally understood why she had survived everything that had been done to her. She had been waiting for this moment, for this family, for him. The waiting was over, and everything that came after, all the challenges, all the enemies, all the impossible complications of loving a man who lived in shadows, all of it was worth it. Every single moment. Some love stories begin with chance meetings and gentle courtship. Others begin with violence, betrayal, and years of painful separation. But the truest love stories, the ones that survive everything the world throws at them, are the ones that begin with a ruthless decision. A decision to fight for what matters. A decision to protect what cannot be replaced. A decision to love, even when loving means becoming something terrifying. Kang Min-jae made that decision the night he discovered the truth about Amara's family. And he never stopped making it. Every day.
For the rest of their lives.